we've been joined by Yasir Masood Afaq. He is a clinical psychologist and an addiction expert. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Wa alaikum assalam. Good morning to you too.
Thank you for being here today. So, within the Quran, 1439 years ago, exactly, I did look up the year, how they're talking about addiction. Today, we are still dealing with addiction. It is not something that has gone away or it's not been eradicated. If anything, we're seeing this problem becoming quite prevalent. What are you seeing at the moment within Pakistan context? What kind of addiction are we going towards, and why do you think we're going towards it?
Right. It is very amazing to know that the Quranic wisdom, which was there revealed to us quite a few centuries ago, is being affirmed by the latest research and psychological discoveries. Now, coming to your question, in Pakistan, unfortunately, this incidence of drug addiction is on increase. Multiple social, personal, emotional factors can be accounted for this increment in the drug addiction and the prevalent incidence. But I would like to talk about the social and environmental factors which make the lion's share in the causal factors of drug addiction. We do talk about peer pressure, environmental factors, some sort of trauma one goes through, and to get out of that trauma, they think that using drug will ease their pain on their emotional and psychological grounds, which is the other way around, in fact. So these are the main factors. And another sorry plight of this drug addiction and the prevalence in country is to be discussed, that it is increasing on the part of youth, youngsters the most. And the excitement-seeking behavior and some peer pressure that it is something in vogue and comes with a style. And again, due to our educational inflation, that will ease their stress, which is stemming from their so to speak, over obsession with the studies and their inability to manage their relationships, which are not taught or trained in even in our academic programs. So this is actually a multitude of factors which eventually lead our youngsters and even young adults to fall prey to this menace called drug addiction.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you said all of that. It's so wonderful to hear, you telling us all the different issues behind it. So now let's break that down. So when you're seeing these issues, everything that you've listed, we have the Quran, we have the Sunnah, but this is one thing also we've been discussing, is that we read it in its original form, which is wonderful and it should be done, but then the lessons that we need and the advice that it gives, you need to understand it in your own language if you're going to practice it. But how do you then, with this increase in youth, going towards addiction because of all the different stresses and pressures you've mentioned, what can they do? Like, what is the solution out there? Because I don't want to be negative on a Friday. It is a very important situation, but let's give solutions. How do you handle it?
Being psychologist, it is said that we need to be incurably optimistic. So I will vindicate your intention to stay positive.
Great, thank you.
We can't come up with one line or one size fits all approach or solution when it comes to drug addiction. Every individual falling prey to this problem comes up with a mix of social, cultural, personal, emotional, psychological attributes. So we need to take these individual differences into account. But even then, when there is a scientific knowledge, it's something more generalizable. When we talk about cure, it is possible through involvement of all the key stakeholders of one person who is addicted to drug, starting from his or her imminent family, immediate family, a friend circle. We use the word protectors and triggers. So we need to understand what are the triggers, what are the motivators when it comes to using or abusing drugs or substances. It might be peer pressure, it might be stress, or it might be any other factor like that. But when we talk about protectors, it is parents, it includes those friends who have a positive influence on that person. It is again our religious teaching being imparted in a practical way, while showing the wisdom more than ilmul kalam, or more than just a count of words. This is the spirit of our religious knowledge and its dissemination. So this thing constitutes one approach which is called community reinforcement approach, CRA.
Excellent.
So we have to involve the entire community around a drug addict to get a dependable cure.
Okay, wonderful. And you know, you've highlighted some really key points there, and this is for both of you guys as well, that you've mentioned discipline in the home. You mentioned the role of the parents because they're a protector. So Yasir, then, how do we maneuver within this situation? Because there's so many elements that parents keep in their mind, which then kind of puts their child's wellness on the back foot. So how do we deal with this?
Any issue related to mental health, we have to have two approaches, preventive and curative. Dr. Kamal talked about a preventive approach, and I would just add one more aspect to this preventive approach, and that is openness in communication. Right, in our society, which is seemingly a bit judgmental society, we are avoidant of open communication when it comes to parents and their kids. Now it's getting better, but the communication is very, very important. Two, when we come to curative aspect, we have to be very clear about one thing. Drug addiction is a disease. It's not a social kink. Yes, we can attribute it as a social or moral kink, but psychologically speaking, we have to take it as a disease. Until you will not have it as a behavioral or even a cognitive disease, you will not be able to destigmatize it. As Dr. Kaval mentioned, that we have to get it, we have to help parents and stakeholders of drug addicts take this thing as a disease. That will help them destigmatize it and to approach some sort of solution. Third, and very important, when we talk about drug addiction, it is not always related to illicit drugs. Rather, some legal, legitimate drugs which are available. Even OTC, unfortunately, we are not much regulated when it comes to pharmaceutical or pharmacological practices in our country. So we can go and we can talk, we can take benzodiazepine even without the prescription.
You can get really strong ones here, which is really shocking.
Indeed. And we see quite a lot of patients who may come to us with their problems related to anxiety and depression. But when we further probe into the issues, we see that they are taking some benzodiazepines for last 1 year or 2 years or even 3 years without even prescription. So we have to understand that as well. If our kids, you think that our kids need proper sleep, even parents ask them to take half a pill and get better sleep without prescription. So it is again this social education needs to be imparted.
Absolutely, that's really some very important points being raised today. I'm so glad. Going forward, actually, yes, I want to ask one more question. You were talking about the peer pressure, because a lot of times, you know, we are taught this. Parents do tell you, and they tell you gradually from young, don't steal, don't do drugs. These are the things why they're bad. But now, with the evolution of social media and the world being so connected, and how do we balance that? How are children supposed to balance that element of life? Because even as adults, we're struggling. Facebook or all these different social platforms, they create something inside, they trigger something, you don't feel good, then you go and find some comfort, temporary comfort somewhere else.
You touched a pain point on my part, and as these days I'm talking about the social media addiction as well, or the mobile phone addiction. See, when we come up with a mix of do's and don'ts, for don'ts, yes, we say what is not required to be done for our children, but we have to be mindful that we have to offer some alternatives. And the foremost alternative which I prescribe to my patients, our coaches, is to go for some physical exertion, exercise, sports, and healthy lifestyle modifications. And this is diminishing very rapidly from owing to the addiction to our gadgets and the digital media. And secondly, maybe again I would talk about some over-perceived pressure when it comes to studies. So for us, the sports and physical exercise and lifestyle modification related to your behavioral aspects, they have gone to the back burner.
Sorry, Yasir, you want to finish your point?
Just one more thing.
Yes.
You talked about wellness. I like to state one thing wherever I get a chance.
Please.
And that is the absence of illness is not wellness, right? If there is no illness, it means that still you are likely to fall prey to any illness in case you don't have reservoirs of resilience and vitality.
Okay.
So the lifestyle modification, the positive attitude towards life, good relationships and ability to manage, maintain, attain good relationships, they add to your reservoirs of being more resilient to compete and to fight against these temptations of life, be it any kind of substance and non-substance addiction.
Absolutely, and this is wonderful that you were here. Thank you so much for being here on this conversation. It was very important, and we're going to invite you back because this is a huge topic, and it's actually one that need to kind of dive into a little bit more.